Most people think starting over at 60 is about finding someone new. It isn't. The hardest part is realizing you don't even remember who you were before you spent 34 years being somebody's husband. This is the story of a man who thought dating again would just be awkward. Instead, it forced him to face something he never expected. Not the women he met, but the man he'd become after a lifetime of marriage. If you've ever wondered whether it's possible to open your heart again after 60, this story might stay with you longer than you expect. My first date after my divorce lasted almost 2 hours. We laughed, shared a plate of tiramisu. Conversation never felt forced. When the waiter cleared our plates, I caught myself thinking, maybe this isn't as hard as I thought. Then she smiled, looked me straight in the eye. David, you're a really good man. I smiled back. Then she quietly said, but I don't think you're ready to date. I didn't understand. What do you mean? She hesitated, like she was trying not to hurt me. I think you still miss your marriage more than you're ready to admit? Neither of us said anything after that. A few minutes later, we hugged goodbye. I drove home, walked into my house, sat in the dark a long time. Then I opened the dating app and deleted my account. Wasn't 'cause she'd been cruel, she hadn't. Hardest part was, I wasn't sure she was wrong. My name's David. I'm 60 years old. Till a couple years ago, I'd never imagined I'd be sitting across from a stranger, wondering if she'd want to see me again. For 34 years, I was somebody's husband. Then one day, I wasn't. My ex-wife and I didn't end 'cause of cheating. Nobody lied, nobody screamed, nobody threw dishes across the kitchen. One evening, she looked at me over dinner and quietly said, I think we've become roommates. I wanted to argue. Instead, I looked at her and realized she'd been carrying that sentence around a long time. She wasn't angry. She was tired. Maybe I was too. Looking back, I think we'd spent years taking care of work, bills, our son, the house, everything except us. By the time we noticed, there wasn't much left to save. Divorce was quiet, almost polite, which somehow made it hurt even more. Friends kept saying, you'll get back out there, you'll meet somebody. I nodded every time. Inside, I couldn't imagine it. Last first date I'd ever been on happened before smartphones, before dating apps. Back when you actually called somebody's house and hoped her father wasn't the one who answered. I knew how to be a husband, had no idea how to be a man introducing himself to a stranger again. For almost a year, I didn't even try. Then one Friday afternoon, my friend Mike stopped by. We'd worked together for years. He walked into my garage, looked around, saw me polishing a wrench that didn't need polishing. He laughed. You know what your problem is? I've got a few. You've gotten too comfortable being alone. I'm not comfortable. You've just gotten used to it. There was a difference. I knew he was right. A week later, he called again. Download the app. What app? The dating app. I don't even know how. You've got a smartphone. Barely. He laughed. Ask your son. That sounded even worse. But eventually, I did. My son came over on a Sunday afternoon. I handed him my phone. I need help. He looked at the screen. What happened? Nothing. I need one of those dating apps. He stared at me a second, then smiled. Well, I wasn't expecting that. Neither was I. He downloaded the app, then handed me the phone. Now we need pictures. I've got pictures. You've got fishing pictures. So every guy your age apparently thinks holding a fish is a personality. I looked at him. It was a pretty big fish. He laughed. Dad, trust me. No fish. We spent 20 minutes going through old photos, vacation pictures, family gatherings, one where I was standing beside my truck, another from my retirement party. Every time I picked one, he shook his head. Too blurry. Too dark. You look angry. I'm not angry. You kind of look angry. Finally, he took me outside. Stand over there. Why? So I can take a normal picture. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Just don't pose. Which, turns out, is harder than it sounds. I shoved my hands into my pockets, took them back out, crossed my arms, uncrossed them. He laughed so hard he almost dropped the phone. You look like you're being questioned by the police. Very funny. After about 30 pictures, he finally nodded. There. That one's you. I looked at it. Gray hair, smile that looked a little uncertain, lines around my eyes I didn't remember having. Wasn't the man I remembered seeing in the mirror, but it was the man everybody else saw. And maybe that was the point. The pictures turned out to be the easy part. Then the app asked me to write about myself. 3 little boxes, a few hundred characters. That was it. Tell strangers who you are. I stared at the screen. What do you enjoy? I typed, fishing. Deleted it. Reading. Deleted that too. Travel. Well, not really. I'd traveled because of work, or because my wife wanted to, not because I'd ever thought much about it. I started over. I enjoy quiet mornings. Deleted it. Sounded like something printed on a coffee mug. Tried again. I'm retired. Deleted that too. Retirement wasn't a personality. After almost half an hour, my son looked over. You still on the first question? I don't know what to write. He smiled. Just write the truth. The truth is boring. Good. Boring's underrated. So I did. Wrote about old trucks, weekend projects, coffee on the back porch, wanting somebody who enjoyed conversation more than fancy restaurants. Nothing clever, nothing impressive, just me. Then I pressed Create Profile and waited. Nothing happened. First day, not a single match. Second day, 1 notification. Turned out to be somebody trying to talk me into cryptocurrency. Third day, a profile that disappeared before I even answered. Fourth day, I matched with somebody named Karen. She wrote, "Hi." I answered, "Hi." She never replied again. That one bothered me more than it should have. Not because we'd known each other, because for a few minutes, I'd let myself imagine we might. I started checking the app too often. Morning, lunch, before bed. Like maybe, if I looked one more time, something would be different. It rarely was. One evening, Mike called. Any luck? Depends how you define luck. That bad? I've had better conversations with my mechanic. He laughed. Give it time. I don't think anybody's interested. They're probably thinking the same thing. Maybe. But that wasn't how it felt. Dating at 25 felt like possibility. Dating at 60 felt like evaluation. A picture, a sentence, a swipe. 30 years of your life boiled down to 3 seconds. Nobody saw the years you spent raising a family, or showing up for work every morning, or helping your neighbors after storms. They saw one photograph and decided. Eventually, I matched with Linda. Her profile was simple. Liked gardening, books, long walks. She suggested coffee. We met at a little cafe downtown. I got there 20 minutes early, sat near the window, ordered coffee I barely touched. Every time the door opened, my stomach tightened. Then she walked in. Blue sweater, kind smile. David? Linda? We shook hands, both laughed a little. I haven't done this in a long time, she smiled. Neither have I. That helped. At first, conversation flowed. We talked about retirement, favorite places we'd visited, our kids, the weather, normal things. Then I started getting nervous, and when I get nervous, I talk too much. So I told her about my old job. One story became another, then another. Halfway through my third story, I caught myself. I'm sorry. I think I've been talking too much. She smiled politely. No, you're okay. But I wasn't. Could feel myself trying too hard, trying to prove I was interesting, trying to fill every silence before it had a chance to exist. At one point, my phone buzzed. Without thinking, I looked at it. Nothing important, just a weather alert. I put it back down right away. But the moment was gone. Conversation never quite found its rhythm again. When we walked outside, the afternoon sun was starting to drop behind the buildings. She smiled. It was nice meeting you. You too. For one awkward second, I wasn't sure if I should hug her, shake her hand, do nothing. We both settled for a quick wave. I drove home thinking, that wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Linda. I smiled before opening the message. Then I read it. David, you're a kind man. I enjoyed meeting you. I just didn't feel the connection I was hoping for. I truly wish you the best. I read it twice, then a third time. She hadn't been rude, hadn't lied. She'd actually been thoughtful, which somehow made it hurt more. I set the phone on the kitchen counter, made myself a cup of coffee, walked out onto the porch. The message stuck in my head the rest of the evening. Not because she'd rejected me, because I'd realized something. For 34 years, I never wondered whether somebody would choose me. Then, all of a sudden, I was wondering again. After Linda, I told myself I wasn't going to take it personal. That lasted about 2 days. Then another match disappeared. Another conversation ended after 3 messages. One woman canceled the morning of our date, apologized, said something had come up. Maybe it had, maybe it hadn't. I never asked. Another woman spent a whole dinner talking about her ex-husband. Not once, the whole dinner. I learned where he worked, what truck he drove, how messy he was, how his mother never liked her. By the time dessert came, I felt like I'd spent 2 hours having dinner with a man I'd never met. When we walked outside, she smiled. We should do this again. I smiled back. Take care. Some lessons don't take long to learn. Months went by. Not terrible months, just discouraging ones. I'd have a decent conversation. Then nothing. A match. Then silence. A phone call. Then, I don't think we're looking for the same thing. Nobody was cruel. That almost made it harder. Wasn't anybody to blame. One evening, I sat on the back porch, phone in my hand, dating app open. My thumb hovered over delete account. I stared at it a long time. Maybe I was too old. Maybe women wanted somebody more exciting, somebody who traveled every month, played pickleball, took selfies on mountain trails. Not a 60-year-old retired manager who liked old trucks and Saturday mornings. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen. Gray hair, reading glasses, a face that looked older than it did in my head. Funny how that happens. Inside, you still feel 40. Then a mirror reminds you otherwise. I thought about my marriage, 34 years. In all that time, I never had to wonder whether somebody wanted to have dinner with me. Never had to think about first impressions. Never had to introduce myself. I already belonged somewhere. No, I didn't. That realization was lonelier than the divorce itself. One Friday afternoon, Mike called again. "How's Romeo doing?" I laughed. "Barely surviving. Still on the apps? For now. You sound tired." "I am." "You meeting anybody?" "I keep meeting people. Just don't seem to meet the right ones." He was quiet a second. Then he said, "You know, I think you're treating dating like a job interview." "What do you mean?" "You're trying to prove somebody should hire you." I laughed. "That's exactly what it feels like." "Maybe stop interviewing." That conversation stuck with me. A week later, I had another date. Nice restaurant, good food, easy conversation. For almost 2 hours. I thought, maybe this one's different. Then, at the end of the night, she looked at me and said, "Can I be honest? Please. I feel like you're trying real hard to be the man you think I'd like." She smiled kindly. "I'd rather meet the man you already are." I drove home thinking about that sentence. 'Cause she was right. Every date felt like an audition. I wasn't showing people my life. I was handing them a resume. The places I'd worked, the things I'd done, the responsibilities I'd carried. Somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten the simplest thing. Conversations aren't supposed to be performances. A few days later, my son stopped by. My truck needed new brake pads. At least, that was the excuse. We pulled the wheels off, laid the tools out on the garage floor. Classic rock played soft from the old radio. For a while, we worked without saying much. Then, without looking up, he said, "Dad?" "Yeah?" "You know what I think? I've got a feeling you're gonna tell me." He smiled. "I don't think you're afraid women won't like you." I shrugged. "Could have fooled me." He tightened one of the caliper bolts. "No. I think you're afraid somebody finally will." I stopped turning the wrench, looked over at him. "What's that mean?" He finally met my eyes. "I think if somebody actually matters, they can hurt you again." I looked back down at the brake rotor. Didn't say anything. 'Cause all of a sudden, I wasn't thinking about dating anymore. I was thinking about trust. That sentence followed me for days, not 'cause my son had said something brilliant, 'cause he'd said something true. I'd spent months telling myself I was afraid of rejection. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was afraid of the opposite, of meeting somebody who actually mattered, somebody who might become part of my life. 'Cause if that happened, I'd have something to lose again. That was different. A couple weeks later, I opened the dating app, almost out of habit. There was a new message. Her name was Susan. Her profile didn't look polished, no glamorous vacation photos, no filtered selfies. Just one picture at a farmer's market holding a basket of tomatoes. Another sitting on a porch with a cup of coffee. Her first message made me smile. "So, do you really spend that much time in your garage?" I laughed, typed back, "Only when I'm avoiding housework." A minute later, she replied, "Honest answer." I like that. We messaged for about a week. Nothing dramatic, no pretending, no trying to sound younger than we were. Eventually, she asked, "Would you like to meet Saturday morning?" I expected another coffee shop. Instead, she wrote, "There's a farmer's market downtown. I usually go around 9. If you'd like to join me." Saturday morning was cool. Clouds covered most of the sky. People wandered between fruit stands carrying fresh coffee. I spotted Susan before she saw me. Blue jacket, canvas shopping bag, comfortable shoes. She smiled the moment we made eye contact. "You found it." "Barely. I almost turned into the wrong parking lot." She laughed. "Good. Now I don't have to be the only one." We walked without any plan. Fresh peaches, homemade bread, local honey, flowers. At one stand, she picked up a tomato, turned it over in her hand. "My father always said, 'You can smell whether it's good.'" I smiled. "I've never smelled a tomato." She held it out. "Try." I did. She watched my face. "Well?" I laughed. "I'll be honest. I still don't know what I'm doing." She laughed too. "Neither do I." That answer relaxed me more than anything else she'd said. Later, we bought coffee from a little cart near the edge of the market. There weren't any proper tables, just 2 folding chairs beside a flower bed. We sat there almost an hour. Nobody was trying to impress anybody. We talked about retirement, grandkids, gardens, old cars, books we'd started but never finished. The best pie either of us had ever eaten. Ordinary things, real things. At one point, she looked at me. "You know what's nice?" "What?" "You're not trying to sell yourself." I left. "I think I finally got tired." She smiled. "I'm glad." "So am I." After a few minutes, she added, "It's nice talking to somebody," she searched for the right words, "who isn't pretending to still be 35. I looked down at my coffee. "So that's allowed?" She grinned. "I sure hope so." When we finally stood to leave, neither of us seemed in a hurry. She adjusted the strap on her bag. "I had a nice morning." "I did too." She smiled. "Same market next Saturday?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I was unsure, because for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about whether she'd reject me. I was simply glad she'd asked. I'd like that. Driving home, I realized something. I wasn't smiling because I'd found love. I was smiling because, for the first time since my divorce, I'd stopped trying to become somebody else. I'd simply shown up. And somehow, that had been enough. Susan and I didn't fall in love all at once. Honestly, I don't think people our age usually do. Life has a way of slowing everything down, including love. We didn't start spending every day together. Neither of us wanted that. We had our own houses, our own routines, our own lives. But every Thursday, we had dinner. Sometimes at the little diner near the river. Sometimes at an Italian place where the waitress stopped asking whether we wanted coffee. She already knew. Other weeks, we'd just walk. There was a park about 15 minutes from my house. Nothing special. A walking trail, a pond, a few benches under old oak trees, people walking dogs, kids throwing bread to ducks. We'd walk slow, stop whenever one of us felt like stopping. Sometimes we'd talk the whole time. Sometimes we'd go several minutes without saying anything. And somehow, the silence never felt uncomfortable. One Thursday evening, we were sitting on a bench watching the sun disappear behind the trees. Susan wrapped both hands around her coffee. I watched two boys trying to skip rocks across the pond. She smiled. "You still get nervous?" I laughed. "Every single time." "Really?" "Every Thursday." She looked down at her cup. "So do I." That surprised me. "You?" She nodded. "I was married 29 years. Took me a long time to remember how to trust somebody." I looked at her. I thought I was the only one. She smiled. "I don't think anybody our age walks into a new relationship empty-handed." She was right. We all show up carrying something. Good memories, bad memories, regrets, hope, fear. Sometimes all of them at once. A few weeks later, she came over for dinner. I'd spent half the afternoon cleaning the kitchen, straightened chairs that didn't need straightening, wiped the counter twice, changed shirts 3 times, even looked up a recipe online. Halfway through cooking, I burned the chicken. Stood there looking at the pan, started laughing. Susan walked into the kitchen. "Everything okay?" I held up the skillet. "Depends." "Do you like charcoal?" She looked at it, then laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter. "I've got a better idea." "What?" "Pizza." 20 minutes later, we were sitting on the back porch eating pepperoni pizza out of the box. Paper plates, cold lemonade, crickets starting to wake up. She looked around the yard. "You've done a lot out here." I followed her eyes. Flower beds, fresh mulch, the old fence I'd finally fixed. "Guess I have." She nodded. "Looks lived in." I smiled. I think that's what I was trying to build. Not a perfect life, just a life. Months passed. Nothing dramatic happened. No grand declarations, no perfect movie ending. Life just settled into a rhythm. Thursday dinners, Saturday morning phone calls, farmers markets, hardware stores, antique shops where neither of us ever bought anything, just looked. One afternoon, we stopped beside an old pickup truck parked outside a feed store. I smiled. "I had one just like that." Susan laughed. "I know. You've told me." I looked at her. "Have I?" 3 times. I shook my head. "Sorry." She slipped her hand into mine. "I don't mind." That might have been my favorite thing about her. She wasn't looking for a perfect man, just an honest one. Around Christmas, my son came over. Susan was helping me clear the dinner table. She washed dishes. I dried them. We kept bumping into each other because the kitchen wasn't big enough for 2 people. She laughed. "So this is your strategy?" "What strategy?" "Stand exactly where I'm trying to stand?" "I was here first." "We're not?" After she left, my son helped me carry the trash outside. Before getting into his truck, he stopped. "Dad?" "Yeah?" He smiled. "You seem different." I leaned against the porch railing. "Different how?" "Lighter." I thought about that. I don't know if lighter's the word. What is? I looked back toward the kitchen window. 2 coffee mugs sitting beside the sink. I think I finally stopped trying to become who I used to be. He nodded. I think Mom would have wanted that. I smiled. I think so too. After my son drove away, I stayed outside a little longer. Christmas lights glowed across the street. Somebody was walking a dog. A porch door slammed a few houses down. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life. For a long time, I thought my marriage ending meant I'd failed. Then I thought dating was about finding somebody to replace what I'd lost. Looking back, both ideas were wrong. Nobody replaces 34 years. Not supposed to. Those years made me who I am. The good parts, the hard parts, the mistakes, the memories. They all came with me. For months, I'd walked into every first date carrying an invisible question. Would this person accept the man I used to be? That wasn't the right question. Real question was, could I accept the man I'd become? That took longer to answer. One spring afternoon, Susan and I were walking through the park. The trees had just started turning green again. We passed an older couple sitting on a bench. They weren't talking, just watching the lake. Susan smiled. I used to think that looked boring. What changed? She shrugged. Now it looks peaceful. I looked back at him. The man reached over, without saying a word, and adjusted the blanket on his wife's lap. She never looked away from the water, didn't thank him, didn't even acknowledge it. He simply did it. Then they kept sitting there. I smiled. What? Susan asked. I think that's what love looks like after a while. She followed my eyes. I think you're right. Wasn't dramatic. Nobody around him noticed. But I did, because a few years earlier, I probably wouldn't have. Would have walked right past. Just like I'd walked past 1,000 ordinary moments in my own marriage, without realizing they were the moments that mattered. That's probably the biggest thing divorce taught me. Not how to be alone, not how to date again, how to pay attention to people, to conversations, to small habits, to ordinary afternoons that don't seem important while they're happening. A few months later, Susan and I were having dinner at our usual diner. The waitress topped off our coffee, looked at us, then smiled. You two have been coming here a while now. Susan laughed. I guess we have. The waitress looked at me. So, are you two a couple? Susan looked at me. I looked at her. Then we both laughed. Finally, I said, I think we're two people who enjoy Thursdays. The waitress grinned. That's a pretty good place to start. After she walked away, Susan reached across the table, rested her hand on mine. You know, what? I'm really glad you didn't delete that app forever. I smiled. I almost did. I know. How? You told me. I did? You tell the story every now and then. I laughed. Do I make it sound dramatic? No. You make it sound honest. I'll take honest. At 60, honest feels like enough. When I started dating again, I thought I needed somebody to replace the life I'd lost. Looking back, that was never possible. Nobody replaces 34 years. What surprised me was learning love at 60 ain't about starting over. It's about showing up honest with all the miles you've already driven. The good roads, the rough ones, the detours you never planned to take. And hoping somebody looks at all those miles, smiles, and says, I don't mind walking the rest of the road with you. 'Cause that's the funny thing about getting older. You stop looking for perfect. You stop trying to impress people. You stop pretending you got all the answers. What you start looking for is somebody you don't have to pretend around. Somebody you can have coffee with on a Thursday, walk beside without feeling the need to fill every silence. Somebody who sees exactly who you are and decides to stay anyway. Looking back, I don't think the hardest part was learning how to date again. Hardest part was believing I was still worth knowing. Turns out I was. Just had to believe it first.